Great. All righty. So, hi, my name is Waverly Reibel, and I've been a coordinator for the Volunteer Water Monitoring Program at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for the last 4.5 years. And Kirstin, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kirstin Stutzman. I'm co-coordinator of the Volunteer Water Monitoring Program, and I've been with the program for just shortly over a year. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And so today we're going to be giving you an overview of why volunteer data is important and how it is utilized here at the MPCA. So the Volunteer Water Monitoring Program is a long-term data gathering initiative to track water clarity trends in lakes and streams around Minnesota. Our program has actually been around for 53 years now, and we have over 1,200 active volunteers in 67 out of the 80 major watersheds here in Minnesota. So our volunteer water monitors, you all, measure water clarity using a Secchi disc or tube at designated locations on lakes or streams throughout the state. During each visit, you record your clarity reading, your surface water temperature, water color, and also observations on the physical and recreational conditions of your lake or stream. A really important component of this program is that you all return to the same site every time you go out, and that ensures consistency in data gathering. And this map here shows all of our volunteer sites all across the state. So it's pretty amazing how many lakes and streams we have monitored by you all. So we'll jump right into the data and what it can tell us. You went out to your lake or stream, you collected the data over the summer. How can it help us? It really helps MPCA and other governmental agencies better understand, protect, and restore lakes and streams here in Minnesota. Water clarity, as you all know, is a really, really quick and easy test, but it's a really important indicator of lake and stream health. I like to say it's like taking the blood pressure of a water body. Gives us a great holistic view of what's going on with that water body. And clarity, or transparency, as we also call it, shows how much sunlight is penetrating into the water. So it signifies the amount of algae or sediment in the water. And that can affect plants, insects, and fish communities. And it can also impact recreational opportunities. As I mentioned before, the volunteers mainly collects water clarity data, and although it is a really simple and easy test, it provides very helpful information about lake and stream health. So for lakes, water clarity can provide an estimate of algal levels. It can show a lake's response to seasonal changes in temperature and precipitation. It can show a lake's response to surrounding land use changes. And it can also show a lake's response to one-time events, such as severe weather. Oh, hello. My lights went out for a second. Had to do a little clap to turn them back on. But yes, as you can see, this one quick test can tell us a lot about lake health over the course of a monitoring season. And again, I want to highlight that volunteers are doing this year after year at the same site. You aren't just collecting one-time information or occasional readings. So many people are collecting decades worth of seasonal data, which is super important to understanding the lake. And moving on to streams, as for lakes, stream water clarity data tells us about the amount of light penetrating into the water body. That can indicate the kind of plant life present in the stream, the composition of the stream bottom, and also if sediment could be limiting the ability for plants, insects, and fish to thrive. So you might be wondering what causes low water clarity. For lakes, it's mainly an issue of an overgrowth of algae caused by an abundance of phosphorus in the water. Phosphorus can come from many sources: atmospheric, wastewater from industry, fertilizer application from homes, and also manure runoff from farms. Occasionally, sediment can be an issue for lakes, but clarity is mainly an algae issue for lakes. And for streams, sediment is the major contributor to decreased water clarity. The main sources of sediment include stream bank erosion and surface water runoff from urban areas and fields. In essence, our volunteer water monitors represent the state's boots on the ground. You're tracking water clarity regularly from year to year across Minnesota. Your data is directly used in the MPCA's water quality assessment process. It's not just data being collected to sit in a repository in the hopes that somebody uses it. It's actively being utilized every year. And also, you all are collecting more than just usable data. You extend our capacity far beyond what staff can accomplish on their own. With over 11,000 lakes and 92,000 miles of streams, MPCA staff cannot monitor all of that water on an annual basis. And you're out there every year preventing data gaps and contributing to the longevity of data collection locally. So we found that our volunteers stay an average of 9 years in the program, which is absolutely amazing. We even have several generations of volunteers who have been in the program. So we've had grandparents passing down the monitoring to their kids, who then pass it down to their kids who are monitoring the same sites now, which is a really, really cool thing to have for a long-running volunteer program. So to ensure that your data is high quality and also usable at the MPCA, we go through an extensive quality assurance and quality control process. And this slide may look a bit overwhelming, but it's all needed. And the process begins with you. So making sure you take our online training and paying attention to all of our training in there, and also reviewing your field guides that you receive in your kits each season helps to make sure that you're following proper monitoring protocols and that data collection is accurate. And then if you mail in your data, we also do a 10% check of data sheets that we enter ourselves, just to make sure that we're not making any mistakes during our data entry. And, it shows if there's any errors that we need to go back and check our data entry more carefully. And all the data that is sent in, either by the online system e-services or by mail, that's manually entered by us staff, that then goes through 3 rounds of rigorous checks before it's finalized in our water quality database called EQUIS. So if you've ever wondered what we're up to in the winter time, it's mostly this, data entry, checking, QA/QC, just a lot of data work. That's what we're working on during the off season. So now that we know all about the data that is collected, here's how it's used at the MPCA. And volunteer collected data directly informs watershed management in 2 main ways. So first, by contributing to the large data set needed to detect water clarity trends over time. And second, by contributing to the data set needed to determine if a lake or stream meets state water quality standards. And we'll first start out by talking about trends, which is a big hallmark of this program. So understanding if and how a lake or stream changes over time is critically important to protecting or restoring it. So this trend analysis is performed by the seasonal Mann-Kendall test. And this statistical test detects changes in water clarity over time by comparing months across years. So for example, Mays are compared to Mays, Junes are compared to Junes, etc. But to analyze water clarity on a lake or stream, a minimum of 8 years and 50 points of data collected between May and September are needed. That's a lot of data, which is why we ask you to go out at least twice per month during the summer. So water clarity may vary from year to year in response to changes in rainfall, watershed runoff, etc. So using data sets with more than 8 years of data helps account for all of these factors. And all applicable SECI transparency data collected on or after 1971 from our water quality database are used in these assessments and trends. But however, the thing is, MPCA staff only monitor lakes and streams in the watershed every 10 years, which does not provide enough data to make trends. So that is one of our big downfalls. So here's Hall Lake in Martin County as an example. Data was first collected by MPCA staff back in 1988. They came back in 2001, 2002, about 13 years later. MPCA then returned again in 2017 and 2018. Few points of data were collected in the intervening years by volunteers, but not enough to determine a trend. If a volunteer had been collecting water clarity readings on this lake over the past 30 years, a trend, if present, would have been detectable. And detecting an improving trend was possible on Crooked Lake in Anoka County because a large amount of volunteers' data had been collected over that 50-year period. So our trend analysis can, this is an improving trend, but our trend analysis can also identify degrading trends, stable trends, no trends, and water bodies in which there's a lack of data to even run the analysis. And so all of this means that volunteer collected data is essential for amassing all that data that's needed to detect trends over time. And so I love to highlight the importance of this citizen science project or volunteer science project, because this helps answer the question that many of you volunteers have, which is, am I making a difference? What if I only monitor for a couple years and then I move or I have to drop out of the program or retire? What happens to data that was collected by volunteers 30 years ago? Essentially, where do I fit in and am I helping achieve anything? And I just want to say that the answer is most certainly yes. And the beauty of long-term data gathering initiatives like this program is that all data are used and considered useful. Old data are just as important as new data because both are needed to understand how conditions are changing over time. The same person doesn't have to monitor a lake for 25 years to make a difference. What's most important is that someone is doing it. And so, for example, this is Lake Minnewawa in Aitkin County. So the first volunteer monitored in 1979, monitored for 9 years until 1987. New volunteer took over in 1989, monitored for 17 years, all the way through 2005 when he retired from the program. Third volunteer took up the mantle in 2006 and monitored for 10 years and until 2015. Fourth volunteer started in 2016, only monitored for 2 years, but that's okay. He prevented an important gap in the data. New person signed up to monitor the lake from 2018 to 2020. And so these people all dedicated their time over this 39-year period, and they collaboratively collected the data to determine that Lake Minnewawa has an improving water clarity trend, even though they may have never met each other. So all of the individual dedication to the lake has created a holistic understanding of it that could have never been achieved with just one person or one entity, one agency. And I will say I do need a volunteer on Lake Minnewawa. We haven't had data since 2020, so I would love to have a volunteer on Lake Minnewawa in Aitkin County. If you know anyone around the McGregor area, please let us know. It'd be great to get someone out there. And so the figures here from the MPCA's 2025 Flowing Forward report show statewide stream and lake clarity trends. This report is amazing. I highly recommend all of you please read through it. There's also great information about like watershed pollutant loads and biological life as well. So it's a really great, really great digestible report to check out. And also includes a lot of your data. And so of the stream sites that have sufficient data through 2024, 330 of them show improving water clarity, 180 of them show degrading water clarity. What's really interesting is also those improving and degrading streams were not limited to a regional location in the state. So they're kind of spread out all over. Nearly a third of the lakes where trends can be calculated have an increasing trend. So it's awesome. However, I do want to say that of the 540 lakes with an improving clarity trend, 175 of them have known invasive zebra mussels. If you didn't know, zebra mussels can cause an increase in water clarity for lakes. However, they also can be detrimental to the lake's ecosystem. So I like to put that disclaimer in there that zebra mussels may be causing that increase of clarity. So moving on to water quality assessments. In addition to informing water clarity trends in lakes and streams all across the state, volunteer collected data also helps us at the state conduct water quality assessments that are mandated by the Clean Water Act. Lakes and streams that fail to meet water quality standards are categorized as impaired. They're added to the impaired waters list, and then they require restoration to improve their overall health. So for lakes, volunteer water clarity readings help determine if swimming standards are being met by combining them with phosphorus and chlorophyll A data. And this is the aquatic recreation standard that Kirstin will be going over a little bit more and talking about some details with that later in the presentation. And then for streams, volunteer water clarity readings help determine if sediment standards are being met. And so both these standards require SECI values in their assessment process. So 28% of lake water body IDs and 13% of stream water bodies IDs used volunteer data in the formal assessment process. There are also other designated uses for water bodies like aquatic consumption, drinking water, wild rice waters that use SECI data as supplemental information, but it's not a required parameter like it is for these two. And wanted to give an example of a success story where volunteer data was used to support the delisting of a sediment impaired stream. So Timms Creek in Reibel County was impaired for total suspended solids in 2020, but was delisted in 2025 due to increased SECI tube readings showing positive results. Reibel County Soil and Water Conservation District and Hawk Creek Watershed Project both helped put many best management practices into action that assisted with the increase in clarity and reduction of sediment. And so we began listing impaired waters in 1992. Since 2002, the agency has delisted 95 previously impaired lakes and river segments because they're now meeting water quality standards due to restoration activities. And now I will stop sharing and let Kirstin take over for the rest of the presentation.
All right, if you'll bear with me just for 1 minute to bring up my presentation here. Always a little bit of clicking around to do. All right, can everybody see my slide?
Yes, we're good.
Great, thanks. All right. Well, Waverly mentioned a really great example of how volunteer data was used in assessment and actually led to a delisting. And I want to kind of just zoom out a little bit and talk about this goal that we all have of clean, sustainable water and where your monitoring fits in with the Minnesota Water Management Framework. This is a really busy slide, but I just wanted to show you this basic graphic part because I think it's really important to think about where you fit in with everything. And so where this star is, this is where the monitoring assessment and watershed characterization kind of the star is where you are with your volunteer monitoring. And basically I like to think of that's where the whole process starts is with the monitoring. And so that's both state and local agencies, and that's you as volunteers that are collecting that data, and that data is being assessed, as Waverly mentioned. But it takes a whole host of state programs, local partners, and the public to kind of go through this entire process where we're looking at the waters, characterizing, and then it goes on to this problem investigation and applied research where the scientists are looking at it and using models and maps and research projects to really get at the core of the issues. And then that moves into the restoration over here in the green, those restoration protection strategies that are developed for each of the watersheds. So the planning is really starting here after they've got the data and they've got the research. And then that planning is done and handed off to the local partners who have these comprehensive water management plans, and where they're able to take these, what are called GRAPs, these watershed restoration protection strategies, as well as the GRAPs, the groundwater version, and bring them into their planning. And so that this is more of a holistic approach of not only just the state, but it's the local partners and the public. And then again, this planning eventually leads to the implementation where on the ground practices happen for prevention and for delisting. And so you can see how important it is, again, where you are here, the STAR and the monitoring part. It's so important that we have that data. And then to focus in a little bit, because the MPCA is so involved in the assessment piece, I just want to show you one slide, just give you kind of a simple overview of the MPCA's water assessment cycle. If there are questions about this, I know we have some expertise that's actually from the MPCA here today that may be able to answer some additional questions about the assessment cycle. But basically, Minnesota is broken into 80 major watersheds. Each of those watersheds is put on a 10-year cycle. And so you can see on this color map, if you know what your watershed is, you know where you fall, where your watershed falls within that cycle. And now kind of changing gears back to volunteer data. Waverly mentioned your data is used for trends analysis and it's also used for assessments. But one of the coolest things that actually just recently happened is that volunteer data was published in a recent journal article. 3 MPCA employees, Allison Gamble, Jesse Anderson, Lee Engel, authored this paper that was recently published in 2026. It's called Patterns in Minnesota's Lake User Perception, Trophic State, and Lake Assessment Data Sets, a 35-year retrospective. So that word lake user perception is the data that they used is physical appearance and recreational suitability data. That's subjective data that all of you are very familiar with, that you've been collecting, and it's subjected on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is like a higher rating, very clear, very usable waters, and then the 5 is the lower rating. So again, that lake user perception data used in this paper for 35 years worth of data that was collected was primarily volunteer data. It was taken on over 3,300 lakes across the state of Minnesota. You'll see the map on the right that depicts all the lakes that were used in the study. And then it spans across 3 major ecoregions that I'll talk a little bit more about. But the 2 big things that this study pointed out is it validated the use of your physical appearance and recreational suitability. So the subjective data was really validated. And then also the other piece is that there's a strong link of how people perceive their data on their lake, or how they perceive their lake, and the formal assessment of the lake. And we'll talk about that. Quick, since I still have the map up, I just want to show the ecoregions that I'm going to mention on the next slide. But we've got the 3 major ecoregions within the state. We've got the Northeast region that has the northern lakes and forests. And then we have the white kind of through that stripe through the middle, which is called the North Central Hardwood Forests. And then the Western Corn Belt Plains, which is the blue there on the map. And so Waverly mentioned assessments and listing and delisting. So for lakes, lakes are assessed according to the aquatic recreation use, like swimmability. And when they're assessed, they're looking at the specific parameters of data for phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and SECI data. And the specific parameters have specific standards. But also across each of those ecoregions, each of the ecoregions have their own standard as well. And then within the ecoregions, shallow and deep lakes have separate standards. So I wanted to kind of just lay that out first, because that's kind of a lot to digest when we're talking about standards. There is just no one single number. But then the way these graphs are laid out right here is we've got the physical appearance data that you as volunteers have collected on lakes over that course of that 35 years in that study, compared to the 3 different ecoregions, northern lakes and forests on the left, in the middle, the central hardwoods, and then on the right, the Western Corn Belt. And then it's divided up between deep versus shallow. And so you'll see the white on the graph is a fully supporting. That means those are the lakes that have fully met standards and are not impaired. And then the gray is the impaired. So what we can do is look closely. If you look at the bottom graph, the recreational suitability values here, and you look at the bottom left in the northern lakes and forests, the deep, you can see how there is a correlation between the fully supporting, the white, and the recreational suitability. So the fully supporting lakes rated pretty high, close to a 1. And then the impaired in the northern lakes and forests deep rated more poorly. And then you'll see a general gradient as you go across on the graph as you work towards the western corn belt and plains, and you'll see how those lakes rated more poorly in general. And so you can kind of see the gradient with the ecoregions there. So again, the fully supporting lakes and impaired lakes were compared to physical appearance and recreational suitability. And basically what this paper showed is that there is a strong link on how people perceive their lake and the formal assessment of the lake. And again, we do have expertise here today that could answer more questions on the paper. We're currently working on, the agency's working on finding some plain language so that we can get an article out to the public about this paper. Right now, the journal article is published and we can provide the link for the journal, but we're planning to get it in a more digestible version. And so that paper really highlights the importance of you as volunteers, that you are the local advocates. You're out there as data collectors and supporting the data collection around the state. And that your knowledge can really make a difference in determining accurate water quality assessment. So we just really thank you guys for that. I'm going to switch gears now because now we've talked so much about how your data has been used, but where to access your data. Great, my data is being used in all of these great places, but how do I find my own data? A lot of you may be familiar with accessing your data, but we kind of just wanted to go over and familiarize you with the various places you can find it. The two main places is the Volunteer Water Monitoring, our program website, where you can access the individual site reports, like specific to your sites. And then you can also access statewide maps showing the average clarity and clarity trends. The other place where a lot of your data for the lakes, the lake ice in and lake ice out data is the DNR climatology office. And so I'll go into detail on each of these. So for our program website, if you may be familiar with this page, but if you click on the volunteer monitoring reports and data on the left side, this is what the top of our page looks like. And the site reports can be accessed by clicking on that button that you see. When you click on that button, you're going to have to select your site. You can either do it by clicking on a map or you can enter in your site code for your actual location that you monitor. And what it will bring up next is this page with a couple tabs on it. And the first tab is your annual data summary. The annual data summary will tell you the statistics on your monitoring for that previous monitoring year. So I've got, we do have the 2025 data up for individual site reports. And so that's what you'll be seeing right now when you click on them. So you'll see it again for the previous monitoring year. It'll go over the number of readings that you took, the mean, the max, and the minimum, and how many rain events for the stream volunteers, which is really important that we capture a couple of rain events throughout the year. And again, that user perception, the physical appearance and recreational suitability will give you a mean and a max on that. And then it very nicely lays out on a graph also on that same page. If you scroll down on that same page, you'll have your transparency data. I picked a stream. This is Prairie Creek. And it just had a nice set of data. So I picked this one as a display, but it'll just graph out your data. And this is your stream transparency in centimeters throughout the year of data collection. The colors do mean something, which I'll show you in the next slide. The other thing, as you scroll down, you will see how your site compares on the left side to the watershed. And so these colors are parceled out by ranges. So the blue is the very good for streams. The very good is 61 to 92. And then the gradient goes all the way down to the poor, which is the readings that are less than 20 centimeters. And so you can see again how this site in particular on the left compares to the average of the other sites within the watershed. For lakes, under the Water Quality Assessment tab in the individual site reports, you will get a wonderful report here on the TSI, which is the Trophic Status Index of your lake. And the TSI is basically an indicator of nutrient richness. And it takes three factors. It takes three parameters to look at and to pair together. It's the transparency, the data that you're collecting, paired with the chlorophyll A and the total phosphorus. So they've taken that data that's been collected within the last 10 years on that site and averaged it to where it falls on the scale. And this scale goes from the trophic status index starts at oligotrophic, which are those clear, very nutrient poor lakes, and goes all the way to hypereutrophic, which are those really nutrient rich lakes, those greener lakes. And then over on the right, it gives you for your particular ecoregion where you expect to find where you would be found within that ecoregion, like what a typical range is. And so this lake, for example, falls right about within the ranges of each the transparency, chlorophyll, and total phosphorus for the ranges. Also, in your individual site reports, this probably looks familiar from the presentation because Waverly had a great graphic showing the transparency trend plot. So if your site, whether it's lake or stream, has enough data, so that's 50 points of data and at least 8 years of data, we can detect a trend and it will be plotted on this map. So a trend of either increasing, decreasing, or no change can be detected when we have that much data. So you will see that as well in the individual site reports. On our data webpage, when you scroll down, there's also links. I didn't take a screenshot of this, but there's links also of our maps. And these are statewide maps that show all of the data from the volunteers and all the clarity data that's been collected on the sites across the state. And it shows, I picked streams, for example, on this one, and you can kind of see that gradient. And again, they're color coded by those ranges from excellent down to poor. You can also, on our mapping page, you can click on each individual site and get a nice little summary of each site. The other type of map that we have available for lakes and streams are the lake or stream trend maps. And so this will tell you whether there's improving or degrading trend or no change at all. You'll see a lot of white dots on there, which is totally fine. That means there's not enough data, but it's as long as we keep this program running and we keep gaining volunteers and keep handing off some of these sites to volunteers, eventually those white dots of insufficient data hopefully will turn into trends and hopefully the green up arrows, right, of improving trends. Right now, our links are down on the site because it is the time of year that we're updating the maps with the 2025. So you should see the stream clarity trend maps and average clarity trend maps being updated by mid-April. And last, we'll talk about the Minnesota DNR climatology offices where you can find your data. And that is the lake ice in and ice out data, which is a really cool map viewer that the climatology office has. So all of you lake volunteers that have been submitting to us your lake ice on and ice off, you are the ones that are providing a majority of the data to this viewer, to the DNR. So we take the data, we enter the data, and then we send it off to the DNR. The spring ice out is actual real-time data. So now is the time to be reporting those ice outs, as we mentioned earlier, because I believe, yeah, this is 2025, and we did have some before March 18th of last year. So this map will start being updated as soon as we get that volunteer data in, and you'll see that go up on the real-time viewer. The last slide that I have is really, really a cool one. The MPCA Surface Water and Climate Data Viewer is another place where you can see the ice data. And for this graph in particular, you're seeing the duration of ice cover, and the period of time frame that was chosen was 50 years. And in 50 years, 10 days, the ice duration has decreased by over 10 days in the last 50 years. So this is kind of another great data viewer to play around with. You can select your own region or county and look at it specific, even to a lake, and look at the trends. So this is another great one. And I think Waverly is providing the links, and we'll also be providing the links to all of these different ways to find your data in a follow-up email. So thank you, everybody, for all of your great work. We absolutely appreciate it. And now we can move on to our question and answer portion, and I will stop sharing my screen here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kirstin, for your section of the presentation. And we do have a couple questions that came in. I tried to answer some as they came through, but I did have a question that I would like to pose to Jesse. Jesse, if Jesse is still here, about what happens when a lake goes from a deep to shallow lake due to sediment, as I'm not sure if that would happen in a short time period. And then there's also the question of what defines deep versus shallow lake. And a shallow lake is a lake that's less than 15 feet deep. I wonder if Jesse is still here. Oh, Jesse, you're able to unmute. Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, that's correct on the depth of the lake. It's defined by historical surveys of the lake's depth that usually the Minnesota DNR has done. And the dividing line between a deep lake and a shallow lake is if the maximum depth is less than 15 feet, it's considered a shallow lake. And if it's more than 15 feet, it's considered a deep lake. It really relates to the proportion of the lake that's shallow enough to grow aquatic plants. And as Waverly and Kirstin talked about it, we have different water quality standards for deep and shallow lakes across the state. And the second question, I'm not aware of a lake changing from deep to shallow based on sedimentation. We really rely on the historical DNR maps to define a lake's character. And they can be changed, but it's a rarity, and I've never seen it change based on sedimentation in a lake.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a great answer. And then another question we had was, beyond the issue of drought concerns, our lake in Hubbard County has shown a continuous decrease in water levels. We have a great deal of irrigation occurring proximate to the lake. Is this being monitored, studied? So I am not sure from my end of things. Kirstin, do you have any idea?
I don't know of that particular situation, if it's being studied, but we could find the answer to that and get back on that answer.
I believe it is. I believe the DNR and the Pollution Control Agency are working together on that. That area around Park Rapids has experienced, as I understand it, a lot of land use change in the past couple of decades, where some forest land was converted to agriculture for the growing of potatoes and other things. And I believe the DNR is actively investigating permits of withdrawals of public groundwater, and they're working on that. But I'm sure there's information online, but I encourage you to reach out to your local DNR office and ask to speak to the hydrologist for your region, and they can help you.
Great. Thank you for that one. So another question I had was explain the response to rain measurement. So I believe Kit was talking about for stream volunteers, when you can mark on your data sheet if it was a rain event that you were sampling during. And so great question. So this rain events, if it's a large rain event, and we do give specifics in our training of what is considered a rain event. So if it is, just sprinkling a little bit, that's not considered a rain event. But the rain events can impact different levels of stuff that's in the stream, different chemicals or sediment that's in the stream. It can dilute them or concentrate them. And so it's not a representative of normal conditions if you are out there monitoring during a rain event. So if it is marked as a rain event, it might be looked at closer differently during like the assessment process, for example. And then I saw Mike, you need a new disc and rope and thermometer, and I'll mail those out to you next week. And if anyone else if you have rusty discs or ropes are hard to read, just let me know and I can get those out to you before the monitoring season. If more than one person monitors a lake in the same year, do you pull the data for that lake? So on your individual site reports, you can go to the individual sites and see your data that was submitted, or we can always pull it. But then for trends, the different sites on the lake are all that data is put together to make the trends. Trends aren't made for individual lake sites. They're made for the lake as a whole. And then, are there any trends in water clarity in southeastern Minnesota? Great question. Depending on whether you're talking about lakes or streams. Right now, our maps are down. That would be where I would send you to take a look. But currently, our maps of average clarity and our trends are down as we're updating them with 2025 data. But those should be out in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be able to take a look and you can see across the state what trends are looking like on an actual map, which would be just better visualization. I'm a new volunteer this year, online training. Yes, there will be a QR code on your folder you'll receive in your monitoring kit where you can take the online training. There's also a link to it on our website that we shared in this presentation, and we'll share it in the recording email as well. Does MPCA determine trophic state index, eutrophic, mesotrophic, etc., categorizing using values defined in Carlson et al.? Great question. Jesse, do you know the answer to that one?
Short answer is yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, there's one I missed from Ken. Basically about invasive species on a lake. How do we reach out to homeowners, property associations on the lakes, educate them about most likely AIS, and that you need to wash your boat off, make sure it's completely drained, all of that work. And that would be a question I would send to the AIS folks at DNR. They would be better equipped. They have a lot of educational materials and outreach materials that are really great to send out to people or put up in local coffee shops or on bulletin boards around your town. or around the lakes. And I think they even have signs that they might be able to put up at some boat launches and things like that. So if you look up DNR AIS, I think there's different coordinators for different areas of the state, and you can reach out to them. Thermometer tips over, doesn't stay upright. Yes, some of them don't. Some of them are great and stay upright. Some of them don't stay all the way up. So you might just have to hold it in the water until, you know, the 2 minutes are up and you can get your temperature reading. So you'll just have to hold it in the water, unfortunately.
The next one is about advanced monitoring. And so can you go over what that might entail? So we do have a advanced lake monitoring program that's been going for a while. Waverly can speak to that. And there's also, we are planning to pilot advanced stream monitoring program. And the only thing I could say about that is the stream monitoring program will be following that assessment schedule that I showed on the map. So if you are, if you see on that map that your area is coming up for assessment in the coming year and you're interested in advanced stream monitoring, I would say just send us an email and let us know that you're interested in that. And I guess just backing up, the advanced stream and lake monitoring entails basically collecting grab samples and then also using an instrument to take dissolved oxygen and temperature data. So that's what the programs entail. But if you're interested in lake monitoring, that Waverly kind of heads that up, and I guess you could talk with her individually about your lake and the need.
Yeah, if you reach out to me what lake you're on, feel free to, and I can take a look at if we do need data, more total phosphorus and chlorophyll A data and dissolved oxygen temperature profiles. And you know, not all lakes are a candidate, but we can take a look. I only accept about 2 to 3 lakes for the advanced program per year, just due to our budget and the lab analysis cost. But yes, you can reach out and I can take a look and see if we need more data on your lake, especially if, you know, we need more data to be able to look at that lake for assessments.
Great. The next question, Scott is asking, can I take more than one site on a stream? I've been monitoring Straight River for less than a year. Absolutely. A lot of our stream monitors do monitor more than one site. So that is great. You can go into eServices and add the site, or let us know and we can add the site for you. So you can just work with us directly for adding a site. But yeah, we absolutely love to have volunteers on multiple sites, especially in this for the stream monitoring program.
Yeah, Jerome asked, can we add advanced stream monitoring to what we're doing this year for the same site? And we are already full up for the advanced stream monitoring, as it is kind of a pilot program this year. So we are only doing very limited sites with a volunteer, and so wouldn't be able to add it this year, but maybe if it's on the cycle coming up in the next couple of years, we might be able to.
Okay, and Jeff is asking in the comments field and the data on the data collection site, do you use any of those comments, or is it just for volunteer use? Occasionally, it's great to mention if you have any comments about what's going on, like if there's sediment in the stream because there's construction upstream, or any of those comments. Beavers, yes, that's a common one. Yeah, and so that, you know, your data sheets, we do hang on to those for several years. But we don't always enter the comments unless it's something pretty significant, then it would get entered in the system. But yeah, I think using the comments field is very great to write it in and make sure that that information is captured. And then Scott is asking, what is AIS? That's invasive species, aquatic invasive species.
Yes.
Yeah, aquatic invasive species. So that's the acronym. And can you also ask a master naturalist? I'm not sure. Master naturalist, I know Waverly attended a master naturalist conference and tabled at it. And so we do have some master naturalists that are volunteers, and that's been a great addition here. to the program?
Yes. And like Lake Ice States, we have an email address. You can just shoot your Lake Ice States to us at that email address. And if you have old ice states, feel free to send those as well, and we can check if we have them. Like if you had a cabin years and years and years ago, or maybe your grandparents tracked the dates back in the day. We take historical ice states, and what we send those to the state climatology. So they'll get it from us if you just send us the email, send us the lake. And the county would be great, as well, as there's a lot of long lakes in Minnesota. So yes, if you just send us an email to that email in there, it's the ice.pca@state.mn.us. I posted it in the chat about a minute or two ago. I also shared the AIS contact list at the DNR, and they have them, the coordinators around the state. Yes, great answer about the comments field. Basically, if we would like comments about if something is affecting the clarity of the water or what's in the water. Maybe you see some cows walking through your stream or something upstream. Beaver dams, I think, are a big one that can really cause differences in clarity as well. Or if you're getting a lot of rain, like a very significant rain amount, it'd be good to get the amount of inches that you've received in the area. Let's see if I've missed anybody. Oh, thank you all so much for all your questions. It's been great to get to talk to you all. Gary asked, are there any outreach materials available to assist shoreline property owners in making decisions about property management that could affect lake water quality?
The DNR does have some outreach materials available. I know we shared them in one of our newsletters, and we can add that to our extensive list of links that we're going to provide to you in the follow-up email. So we can come up with some additional outreach materials that are available.
Info on get together this year from Kit, the Seki social. So it'll probably be in October, and we have not confirmed a location yet, but it will most likely be in the northern half of the state this year. But as soon as we get that in, we'll get that out to everybody. And then I think Marty, let me see if I can, Marty. Okay, Marty, you're able to unmute and ask a question. I saw your hand raised. Sorry, Marty, if you can't unmute, feel free to put your question or comment in the chat too. Jesse also shared a great PDF on lake development. Great, thank you, thank you. Yeah, residents living on a lake, if there's a lake association, you can always reach out to them, or you know, we can always send a couple of our little program brochures, and we can get those out to you, and you can pass them around or put them in mailboxes. Anything like that would be great. I bolted a 3-foot handle on my thermometer. Yes, I've seen a couple different thermometer modifications that have been awesome. But yes, people always think that thermometers are really funny. But we did test over 8 or maybe even over 10 different thermometers from all sorts of different companies. Stream thermometers, fly fishing thermometers, pool thermometers, everything. And we test them in our wet lab, so a controlled environment with temperature, and we wanted to see what was the most accurate. And these little pool thermometers ended up being the most accurate out of all those different fly fishing and stream thermometers, and just the better quality of not falling apart most of the time. And we also wanted something that floats, just in case, you know, somebody drops it in, but some of them float, hopefully. Over the years, the weed growth has been increasing, affected my ability to see the Secchi disc as it is lowered. Great question. I don't think the clarity of the lake has changed, only my ability to see the disc because the weeds block the disc. Any suggestions? It's a great question. You might need to just, well, I guess your whole site that you're monitoring, if you know, around the whole site is pretty weedy, then I'm not really sure. We might just have to find a different spot that has less weeds and get you a new site to monitor on the lake. But if the whole lake's pretty weedy, then I'm not really sure if you have any suggestions, Kirstin. Who is responsible for groundwater monitoring in the state? Who's that?
The PCA does have some groundwater monitoring going on. Yeah, and so that's another thing is, see what else is coming in here. Okay. But yeah, there are wells that are being monitored across the state. That's, again, we can send out a little information on that. Kim Lang just sent a link. Perfect. I was struggling to get at that link and wanted to put it up, and she's got it there. All right. Thanks so much, Kim.
Yes, Minnesota Lakes and Rivers has a lot of information for property owners. So if you look up Minnesota Lakes and Rivers advocates on Google, their website should pop up, and they have great information. I did want to say we are at 1 o'clock. And before everyone hops off, I wanted to say thank you so much for attending our webinar presentation. I hope you learned a bit about your data and why we use it, why we need it, and why it's important. And again, we'll have this recorded and we'll share it out as well, so you can watch it whenever you need. And feel free to shoot us any questions over email that, you know, maybe you want a little bit more information on. And we will also get all the links out as well. So you're going to have tons and tons of links to look through all sorts of different data, because data is fun and helps us learn a lot about Minnesota and what's going on here in our environment. But yeah, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks all.